here. All right, are we on, John?
We are on. We're ready to go.
Let's go. Here we go. We're back with the Limitless Mindset Roundtable, episode 3. Let's go. The belief breakthrough process. So if you're new here, my name is Logan Manzanares. I'm the owner of BSC Wealth Better Coaching. I've helped transform well over 2,000 people's lives through this little thing we call health and fitness. Also a real estate investor, a husband, a father, and one of the most grateful people on this planet. And so today we're here with Mr. John Bodner, and we're talking today about the belief breakthrough process. And so last week we talked about what a breakthrough was. Today we're talking about how you actually can execute tactically a breakthrough on yourself and use this process to change your life and really just change your mindset and upgrade your beliefs on what is possible for your life. So let's go ahead and let's dive in to the breakthrough process. This is very tactical, so get your pen and paper out, take some notes. We're about to have some fun here. All right, so there's actually 9 steps. So if you are taking pen and paper out, get ready for 9 steps. So the very first step is grounding. And so what is grounding? Grounding is the state in which you are able to, let me read the definition actually. The purpose of grounding is to separate from your thoughts and connect to your intuition. It's to clear your mind of all thoughts and prepare to receive answers. So how I would interpret that is basically getting to a place where you can be relaxed, you can be calm, you can be clear of thoughts in which you and to-do lists and tasks. And it's really what I would consider like a meditative state, right? When people think of meditation, this is what I would consider like getting into that state where you just clear your mind, clear your thoughts, turn your brain on mute for the moment, and just like sit in peace. So that is what the first step of grounding is. And basically how you get into a grounding state is through deep breathing, just like through like meditation. If you've ever done yoga or any sort of meditative practices, you'll do it through your breathing. And so taking big breaths in through the nose, like an example would be big breath in and then slow breath out, and just really getting that relaxed, that calm state, focusing on your breathing, getting to a place where you can have that really that peace of mind. So that's what the grounding process is. That's step number 1 of the process. So John, kind of tell you about your experience about getting into that grounding state. What are some of the things that you like to do to get into a grounded state?
Well, the first thing is definitely the breathing. My brain is very hard to quiet down, so I accept that it's going to take a long time, that if I have something to focus on that's not in a conscious thought, then that's what I can focus on. So focusing on the breath. I also have my eyes closed, make sure I'm not taking any visual stimulus. Sometimes actually I have my head down. I do these in the morning, so I'm a little sleepy and I just kind of get into that position, and it's very peaceful, relaxing without feeling like I'm trying to sleep or trying to think of anything specific. And sometimes it can take me up to 5 minutes of deep breathing to feel like I'm finally in that quiet state.
Yeah. And I think it's important to understand is that everyone's a little bit different on how quickly they can get into that state. So for instance, like John said that he has sometimes where it takes like 5 minutes, like I can probably do it in like 2 or 3 in like 2 or 3 breaths. And I've had times where it takes me minutes to get into it as well. But ultimately, like the more you practice this, the more you do it, the better you get at it as well. And so that's also like, it's a skill to get into a grounded state, to clear your mind, clear your thoughts. So if it's like the first time you do it, you're like, man, I can't quiet my brain down. Duh. Like, how often have you tried to quiet your brain down before? Right? And so don't say, I suck at meditation, I suck at grounding after your first time. Well, of course you suck at it, but does that serve you? Like, is that going to help you become a better grounder? Help you get into a place where you can actually clear your thoughts and clear your mind? Right?
Well, if it's something you haven't done, then it's reasonable for you to be bad at it. That goes for pretty much anything.
Yes, which is a great point. Like, it's reasonable for you to be bad at this to start with, and as you get better at it, like for me, I've been doing this consistently for probably 6 months now, almost 6 months, and I'm way better now than I was when I first started, right? And so, John, like you want to weigh on that too, is but like where you are now from where you started, from a standpoint of just like even the simple first step in grounding.
Absolutely, yeah. The grounding is not only something that's getting faster than when I first started, but I'm also more willing to try it in the first place. When I first started doing these, it was not only harder to begin grounding, but to actually get to the point where I was closing my eyes and accepting that I need to ground. So there's going to be, or there can be, a lot of internal resistance to even the first step of the process. But again, like we've been saying, you get better at it. And now, well, actually, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as far as grounding specifically goes, yes, you get better at it, just like any other skill.
Awesome. So we're spending a lot of time on grounding because it's important. Because if you get yourself set up properly with a good ground, get yourself in that state, it allows the rest of the process really to run a lot smoother. And so really focus on like getting to that grounding state, like make it the focus. Because if you can get into that true state where your mind is clear thoughts, the rest of these questions, the rest of these things that come up, the rest of the process becomes way easier.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're going to transition into step number 2. So once we're grounded, we're going to identify the limiting belief, right? And so the first very episode, we talked about what a limiting belief is. So let's go ahead and restate that for anybody who's maybe just watching this one and didn't go back and watch the other one. So a limiting belief is a belief that is holding you back. It's not serving you. It's like negative self-talk. It's like those nasty thoughts that we tell ourselves. It's like us being like too hard on ourselves. That is really just, it's putting a block on what you believe you're capable of. And so that's what a limiting belief is. And so step 2 in this breakthrough process is you asking that question, like, what is the number one limiting belief coming up for me? And so this is really important, right? Especially when you first start doing this, like listen for that intuitive answer, trust whatever comes up is actually what you need to work on. And in that moment, especially if it doesn't even make sense, right? So a lot of times when we first start this, like there's like the thing that pops up, like, it's not gonna make sense call, like that can't be it. Like that's not it. Trust it. Like this is where you learn to trust your intuition and go with it, because going with it, as you learn to the next steps in the process, it makes a lot more sense if you go with that, when you go with that with your intuition, what comes to you, and you start to realize why that came to you as you start to ask the next questions after the first one, which is what is your number one limiting belief? John, your experiences with that?
The main point that, especially if the belief you come up with doesn't make sense, you have to run with it. I've had several moments where a belief comes up and I'm like, I don't believe that at all. But if that's the case, then where did it come from? Right? It's if you are in that grounded state and you have access to your intuition and to your subconscious to some extent, like it had to come from somewhere. So it's worth running with and making sure that you can crush it.
Yeah. And another point to make too is that when you first start this, like when you say what is your number one limiting belief, like you'll literally probably have a lot of limiting beliefs, because as most human beings, we are engineered to think negatively, like what I don't want. But as you do this more and more, you might have to go more specific. And so this is something that me and John actually talked about this week, is that maybe you really want to focus on your health, or maybe you want to focus on your finances, or you really want to focus on your relationships. So you can also attach that to the end of it. So it's like, what is my number one limiting belief holding me back from losing 50 pounds? What's the number one limiting belief holding me back from making $100,000 a year? Right? You can get more specific, and so you can get really concentrated if you want to work on a specific target or specific area, rather than just being really general. So that's also another little tip and hack, is that you can go very, very narrow as well. But I definitely recommend starting very wide, because the wider you start, it allows you to go narrower and deeper as you do this more and more often. So step 2 is identifying that limiting belief. Let's talk about step number 3. So now, once we identify what this limiting belief is, we're going to ask ourselves, like, what is the first memory that comes to your mind when you hear this thought, right? And so, for an example, let's say that like the number one limiting belief is that I can't be consistent, right? I can't be consistent enough to lose weight. And so you're going to go ahead and like reground. So reground yourself, take a big breath in, slow breath out, and you're going to ask yourself, what is the very first memory that comes to my mind when I hear I can't be consistent losing weight? And then again, same thing. Trust that memory. Trust that first thing that pops in your head. It's the perfect place that you need to focus on, right? And then you start to explore that memory. Yeah, John, what's your feedback on step number 3?
This is one that I actually find difficult most of the time, and it's not because the belief that I came up with doesn't link to a memory, but if I don't reground in this moment, I don't have very good access to those memories. So the main thing that I'd like to share is grounding is really step one, but it's also step 2B, 3B, 4B, and so on. So constantly regrounding and allowing yourself to access your intuition, because it's going to get emotional. Probably by step 2, you're feeling emotional. So getting back into that calm state is what makes all of these other steps possible.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, some of the stories that will come up for you, and they're usually all related back to your childhood, or sometimes it can be like high school and college, depending on how old you are, of course. But a lot of times you'll find is that if you actually search back, a lot of these will be in your early childhood, and you'll be surprised at how these memories that happened then, how they impact your life today. So that's probably the most interesting piece to me, is like, as I explore these memories, some of the things that pop up, I'm like, I remember that now. And then I remember what I decided about myself, which is going to the next piece, which we'll talk about, which is really interesting. So, John, you want to follow up with that at all?
Yeah, it's amazing how you come up with a memory and you're like, I don't see how this is relevant. I haven't thought about this in years. But when you actually dive into it, it's like, dang, that was really impactful. Because especially when you're a kid, but even as recently for me a couple of years ago, these, and probably now, things that happen, you do make decisions about yourself, or you reinforce decisions that you already made. And it's really easy to make those decisions really quickly, especially when you're young. So yeah, it's just incredible how you come up with a memory that seems totally irrelevant, but then you're able to link it if you ground again.
If you ground again, which is the key, So let's step number 4, right? And so now this is the deeper, so now we're going to identify the deeper limiting belief, which is what I alluded to earlier. So now, once you experience this thing, so you got this memory, right? You talk about this memory, like, what did you decide about yourself when you experienced this, right? Like, this is actually the true deeper belief that you're really holding on to. And so you can talk about how, like an example would be, let's say that we're going back to middle school, and we were playing a basketball game, and we lost, right? Like, what did you decide about yourself at that moment? I decided that, like, it wasn't worth putting all this effort in, and that, it hurt too much to lose. And so basically that's the belief that is taken from this experience, from this memory. That'd be like an example, right? But you're taking that experience and you're saying, what did I decide about myself from this experience?
Exactly. And I think that's the best way to ask the question as well. Is if you ask it in a way that's, how did that make me feel? It's not as specific about you and actually creating a belief. So it's important to go into the decision that you made, conscious or otherwise, rather than just how it made you feel. So really want to make it's got to be about you and how you feel about yourself.
And what is, like, kind of what you said, whether it's conscious or not, like, most of these decisions are not conscious. Like, we didn't, like, decide that we weren't worth it, we're not valuable. It's just like, through our interpretation, we're like, yeah, like, I guess I'm not worthy because I guess I didn't win, or I didn't get the love I was expecting, or I didn't get the outcome I was looking for. So we ultimately decide about ourselves subconsciously. That subconscious is what actually makes our decision-making process today, right? So that's why it's important to identify what that limiting belief was/is. And then once you have that limiting belief, you start to examine, what is this limiting belief costing you? And, like, how do you see this belief showing up in your life today? So an example would be like, oh, it's not worth it to put effort in, or I guess I'm just not really that good, I'm not that smart. Like, how's that affected your results in the past and in the present? Like, how would it affect you in the future? And, like, how do you consider it to impact your life, your health, wealth, your finances, and your relationships? Like, what is it actually costing you? And as you start to dive into these things, start to really understand the magnitude of what these beliefs are truly costing you, right? And so, John, what are some of the experiences that you've had to identify these limiting beliefs, and how have you seen those beliefs show up in your life today?
I've had a lot of limiting beliefs about self-worth, and not just in terms of monetary value, but work ethic or my ability to impact other people. And as I dive into the cost of those beliefs, well, dang, it's costing me what I really want, which is, of course, the opposite of all of those things. I want to be able to help people. I want to be a valuable person. I want to have good work ethic. But instead, what happens if you don't identify the cost and make this change and change the belief, the way I like to say it is your brain doesn't want to be wrong. So if it truly believes that you are not a valuable person, your subconscious will do everything in its power to make sure that that is true. And that's something that I've experienced a lot is I sit here and think, okay, I really, really want to go do this thing because it's going to help me out in the future and it's going to make me a more valuable person. And it's something that is really good for me to do right now. But there's friction there because my brain is like, well, oh, if you go do that thing, then you're going against what you believe, which is that you're not valuable. Therefore, you're not going to go do that valuable thing. That's a tough place to be, and I firmly believe that it happens to everybody way more often than we care to realize.
It's legitimately we're rationalizing and talking ourselves out of things. Like that is literally where that comes from. It comes from this confliction of like we knowing what we should do versus what our beliefs are holding us back from believing that we can do.
Mhm.
Right. And that's where conflict happens inside of us. And that's where we start to rationalize why it's okay to put things off when it's not, why it's okay to just like have one or we deserve things, right? And get this entitlement mentality. It comes back to this like these false beliefs versus what we know we should do in this conflict. Right. And then like as you said, because we want to be right, we need to be right. In fact, we have to be right. And so we will literally tell ourselves anything to make sure that we are right, which subconsciously hurts us hard, right? Because if we don't understand that we have these limiting beliefs that say that like this is who we are, but we don't understand them, then we will like rationalize it. We will try to logically make ourselves right by like what John said, is by just basically self-sabotaging ourselves. Like, yeah, you're right, I am that person. So I'm just gonna binge. I'm just gonna go crush a bunch of donuts and pizza because that's just who I am. I'm the type of person who crushes pizza. I'm the fat kid, right? Like you want to make yourself right. And if you just understood that there's that little voice in your head, that limiting those limiting beliefs that they were there, they're the ones who are actually making these decisions for you. You would start to address those. You could actually upgrade those and change those. So now it becomes easier for you to be the person who does what you need to do. It's like, hey, like I don't really need to crush pizza and cookies and ice cream. Like I can do what I want to do rather than what I think I have to do to live up to this identity that I've had for so long, right? So step number five, examine the cost of limiting belief, right? Like this one's super powerful. And the more you dive into this, the more you start to realize like, man, like these things cost a lot. They cost you a lot of like, again, like whether it's your health, whether it's your time, it's just your peace of mind. It's really what it's costing you in like this conflict, this inner dialogue, this like these feelings of guilt and conflict. Like I think that's for me personally, it's the biggest thing that I've realized is when I'm not congruent with myself, like I'm just like not a good person. Like I don't feel like a good person, I should say. But I don't feel like a good person. Like I don't show up powerfully. I don't. I'm not. I'm not the best father. I'm not the best husband. I'm not the best business owner. I'm not the best like person when I don't show up because I'm incongruent with myself. And so understanding these costs, super important, right? All right. Step number 6, my favorite step of all, actually, and honestly, one of the hardest ones. And I'll tell a little story about John. Me and John have been doing this for a while, but like giving yourself permission to shift is probably one of the most powerful things that you can actually do is give yourself permission to shift to a new belief and be willing to let this old belief go, which can be attached to this identity of the person he once were. And so like I'm going to use John as an example here. Like when we first started doing the breakthroughs, it was really hard for John to want to let go. Like he's just like, I do, but I'm not going to, basically, right? And like he's not alone on that. Like a lot of people are very much like that because like, we live with these beliefs, with these identities for so long that we just believe that's who we are. Like that's who we're destined to become because that's just the way that that it is. Like that's all it's ever been before. So that's all that it is to this point. And I think this is like one of the most powerful things you can do is just like actually just give yourself permission to be like, I can let it go. I can let that belief go. I can adopt new beliefs. And so step number 6, I would say behind grounding is probably one of the most powerful things you can do is just give yourself permission to move on and to grow.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, John.
Yeah, going back to why it can be difficult to give yourself that permission. Every time I encounter a really deep-seated limiting belief, like I actually did this morning, probably my deepest one yet, which is good timing.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Step number 6 was very challenging, but because I didn't want to let go, and it's a fear of loss is what I feel it is. It's like, you, even though it's a part of you that you don't necessarily want to be that way, it still is a part of you. So the way that I encourage myself to give myself permission to shift is I first I ask 2 questions. One is, do I want this to be true? This limiting belief, do I want that to be true? And number 2 is, well, that's really the main question. But the other one is it worth the cost for it to be true? So if I say, you know what, yeah, I do want it to be true, at least right now, then I go, okay, well, do I want the cost? And if I'm able to say no to either of those, then it's really makes it a lot easier to relieve the pressure and say, okay, yes, I understand logically now that I do want to shift. I do want to change this belief. But the most helpful one that I had to use today was accepting that you don't need to lose a part of yourself. You're simply replacing it or upgrading it, however you want to visualize it. And by doing that, it takes away that fear of loss. And sure, there's fear of change, but fear of loss is more powerful than fear of change. Say, okay, I have this belief. I don't want to lose this piece of myself, but you know what? I sure as heck can change it. And that makes it a lot easier for me to get through step 6.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Step number 6, give yourself permission, right? All right. Step number 7, create a new belief, right? What's this upgraded belief? How do we upgrade the belief that we're currently talking about? For example, like an old belief would be like, I'm not worthy, right? And so to upgrade that belief, you could say something like, I am worthy, I'm worth it, I'm deserving, I'm enough, right? Like I choose to be worthy, I choose to be enough, right? There's lots of different ways you can spin this. And if you want to add to it, it's like, I choose, I choose to be a worthy parent. I choose to be a worthy boss. Like you can start to add all these things to it. Really, just what resonates with you the most, and that's the kind of the really cool part that I love about this breakthrough process is that it's super unique to each individual. Super unique, right? It's like what resonates with you is going to be different than what resonates with me. Now, what I've noticed with doing this with multiple people and doing this for myself, that there are certain ones that I see that are consistent throughout people, which is great. But for the most part, everyone does have like these different messages that all of a sudden they sync up and they click. And once they click, like, oh, I like that. Like that serves me. Like I can go back to that. And I can use that. And that's ultimately what this is about. This is not just about like just a one-time thing, right? Like the whole point of this breakthrough process is so that you actually have something that when you get into these situations, you have like essentially it's a mantra, which we'll talk about here as we go a little bit further. But it's like a belief that every time you go into to a situation or you get triggered, like you have a belief to go back to. It's like I am worthy. Like I'm a worthy parent. And all of a sudden, when things don't go the way you plan, you start saying your mantra. It gets you back into a state of excitement, motivation, and belief in yourself, rather than the old feeling of like I'm not worth it. I'm not valuable. I couldn't do it anyway, right? So the creating the new belief is one of my favorite pieces of this whole process as well, because it's so unique to the individual. And I will also say this again, it is also a skill. When you first start this, you probably will not be, I'm gonna put a limiting belief on you. Actually, I'm not gonna do that. You will get better at it. You will get better as you do this more and more. And so with that being said, like the more you do it, the better you get at creating these beliefs, and more they'll feel authentic and they'll feel real to you as well. Yeah, John, same thing. Like I will say that you were somebody who like had a hard time saying these beliefs because they didn't feel authentic, they didn't feel real. And so like, please like share your experience and your story from like your first couple breakthroughs to where you are now, with specifically on that topic of like restating these beliefs.
So you're talking about
Or
just coming up, just creating the
stating
belief,
it.
right?
Yeah. So
Yeah, not stating, but creating it.
So creating it, yes.
So creating the belief is one of those things where it can feel very disingenuous as you're coming up with them. We're not even stating them yet, but just thinking like, okay, can I really feel that? Can I really think that? Can I really believe that I'm worthy? And that's where you have to get that out of the way and go with a logical statement that uses words that you actually like, and focus instead on, okay, what logically makes sense to say if I feel I'm not worthy, if I believe I'm not worthy, what's the antithesis of that? Oh, I am worthy. And if you'd rather phrase it something somewhere differently or give yourself more personal power, you can say, I choose to be worthy. And so with my experience, I didn't even give myself the chance to think of new beliefs because I felt like it was too much of a commitment to really what it means is I didn't commit to step number 6 to give myself permission. Which it all goes kind of back to that. So here's where I would encourage you to reground again and just think of it logically. Say, okay, here's a belief that I'm changing. What makes sense to me that not only counteracts that belief, but actually is something that I feel I can embody, at least logically speaking.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I really answered the question you had, Logan, but that's a helpful experience for me whenever I'm struggling to come up with new ones. Another thing you can do is just once you get better at it, is just rapid fire. Give yourself like 5 that makes sense logically, and then pick from those 5. You can pick a couple that actually sound good to you or resonate. We use that word a lot, but if it resonates with you, then pick it and then cross the other ones out because they're not going to serve you as powerfully as the ones that you picked out from the list.
So I want to touch on that because I think that's a great little piece of wisdom is that rapid fire, like when they first come out, like you're just talking. It's almost like you're brainstorming. You're just like spitballing. It's like, okay, like I'm trying to counter this. I'm not worth it. So like I'm worth it. I believe in me. I'm worthy. I'm a worthy person. You just start spitballing out, and then all of a sudden, like as you start to search deep and deep, what you're doing is you're creating these the counter to the original limiting belief. You start to come up with a lot of them, and then you'll find ones that really stick with you. And as you start to say more and more, again, you'll change the verbiage slightly, whatever, like just whatever resonates with you, right? But like creating these new beliefs are really powerful. I mean, like the first time you do it, it might not like feel like super strong, but as you do it more and more, all of a sudden you'll start to tweak it and you feel it, and then like, oh, like I got this, right? Which is one of my favorite new beliefs is like I got this, right? Like that one's a fun one. So anyway, creating new beliefs, super fun process. And it really is the thing that you basically give yourself permission. So step number 6, why it's super important is because if you're finding a hard time creating this new belief, it's because most likely you didn't give yourself permission to shift to a new belief. You still want to hold on to this limiting belief, which is what John alluded to earlier. Let's talk about step number 8. So step number 8 is one of the most powerful pieces of this process, and it really can get really deep. And this is where if there's crying going to happen, it's probably going to happen right here, right? And so this is where you basically go back to that memory, that first memory that you came up with, that earliest memory when it came up with that limiting belief. And you go back to this memory, okay? Go back to this memory, and before you make a decision about yourself after this experience, you have somebody who shows up for you. Somebody who shows up for you powerfully. Somebody who shows up to give you wisdom, to give you advice. And you pick this person. It literally, like, it could be anything from God. It could be you and your highest self. It could be like a mentor. It could be a friend. It could be a current spouse. It could be someone from the situation. Like, it literally could be anybody. It's just like, again, this is where you need to trust your intuition. Like, who shows up for you in this moment to give you advice, to give you wisdom before you make the decision. This decision that you like is going to change your life forever. This negative belief that like you're not worthy, you're not worth it. Like before you make that decision, who shows up for you to give you advice on how to actually think about the situation, right? And then that person shows up, and then what advice do they give you? Like, what's the advice that they give you? So what this does is that allows you to pull yourself out of the situation, look at it from a third party point of view, and say, boom, what advice would so and so give me? Right? And when you're able to do that, it's really powerful, right? Because like this is like the message that you need that you needed to hear that you didn't hear at that moment, right? But you get to hear it now. Yeah, John, you want to keep rolling on that one?
Yeah, and this is in the first 2 episodes we talked about exploiting the subconscious processes that we have, and this is exactly what we're doing in this step. Is to reiterate it, your subconscious or your brain will say does not recognize the difference between illusion and reality. If you visualize it and you perceive it while in a grounded state, you believe that it's real, or subconsciously you do. Like that is something that actually happened to you. That's why dreams can be so impactful. That's why limiting beliefs are so impactful, even though you don't necessarily have a concrete reason to feel a certain way or believe something. It made a decision based on a perceived trauma, we'll say. So this is where you get to interrupt an experience that you had, where you don't get to change what happened to you, but you do get to change your experience of it and what you take away from it. And because you're visualizing it so well and getting into a very specific memory, this is how you're rewriting your belief. This is what I believe this is where the rewriting truly happens. Well, I guess that's step number 8, right? Is rewrite your story. But this is where you're able to subconsciously make the change and say, okay, that's the perception I have of this memory now. And hey, it actually serves me. I learned something really good from this. Even if it's a traumatic experience, I learned something from it.
Yeah, I think that's really the really cool piece, is that you're able to take something that's maybe traumatic, as John said, and you're able to turn it into like, what was the thing I needed to learn from this? What was the positive in this? What could I take from this today and use it as something that serves me rather than something that's been holding me back?
And it's never too late to learn something from your memory. Like, I don't care if the memory you're rewriting was 60 years ago, you can still learn something from it because it's something that happened to you. It's something that is happening to you now as you're rewriting it. So you can learn from it. And you can be better from it as well.
100%. And it's important to understand that, just to be super clear, like, we're not saying that you can change the outcome of what happened. Like, we're not saying that at all. But what we are saying is that what you can change is your perception of it. You get to choose whether that experience was actually good or bad. Ultimately, like, there's one thing that nobody can ever take from you, right? They can take away your money, they can take away your health, they can take away your kids, they can take away your house, but no one can ever take away your choice, right? And you have the choice to either make it a positive experience, or you have the choice to make it a negative experience. That's a choice that you have. So that's what you get to redo right here, is that you get to decide, you're going to use this as a positive thing that's going to serve you, you're going to continue to let it hold you back, hinder you, and continue to keep it a limiting belief. Which we're not going to do that, because we're going to do step number 9. We're going to claim a new belief, right? And that's the next piece of the puzzle. Is now we've gone through the story. Now we're going to talk about those beliefs that we created in step number 7. And we're going to claim them, right? We're going to say them with power. We're going to say them with conviction. Also, what I like to do in this is, like, I like to write them down. I like to, like, make sure that I have them on paper so I see them and use them, right? So, like, I write them down. Sometimes I put them on my phone. Sometimes I'll put them, like, I write places so I see them over and again. And this is where you actually get to really claim this belief and start to live it. I think this is one of the most important pieces, is like, this breakthrough process, although we're talking about it as an individual process, that's just the start of it, right? The real work is done is, how do you apply this in your life? That can be 2 ways. Number 1 is, like, as I call it, like a routine or like a preventive measure, something that you just do when you're in a normal state. And so this is something you're working on when you're not emotional, you're 100% logical, so you're working on these beliefs. That's one way you can do it. The second way is, like, when you actually get triggered by something, when you actually get upset, when you start to feel like you want to sabotage yourself, boom, it's time for belief breakthrough. It's like, okay, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, why do I feel like I want to binge? Why am I feeling like I just want to eat everything in sight? Why am I feeling like I just want to just quit and give up and not do what I know I'm supposed to do? Like, why am I thinking that? Boom, ground, right? Go through your breakthrough process. Why am I feeling frustrated, right? Trust that first belief. Boom. What pops in there? And then you just literally walk through this process, right? So there's 2 ways you can actually use this process. The first way is, like, doing it on a consistent basis. So I talked about this last week, like, from a like, routine standpoint, like, how often should you do these? I'm a huge believer in, if it's important, you should do it every single day, right? So breakthroughs are important. Do them every day. Working out is important. Do it every single day. Eating is important. Do it every single day. Sleeping is important. Do it every single day. Tell your spouse you love them. Do it every single day, right? Brush your teeth. You know, just like little things. And so that is how I would tell you to use this process, is do something that's important to you and it's helpful. Do it every single day. So, John, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this idea of claiming the new belief. Like, what are some of your favorite ways to anchor this in and to get it to stick, and to use them as well?
Well, as far as declaring goes, I say it out loud, and almost every time, the first time I say it, no one would be convinced that I'm actually claiming it. But what I do is I say it again and again and again, and I don't even have to say it all that loudly, but my tonality and my conviction to how I'm saying it is what proves to me that I can make the change, that I am making the change, to my belief. So really, I just say it over and over and over again. Sometimes it's 3 times till I feel really good. Sometimes it's 20 until it's like, okay, that sounded good. That sounded real. And that felt real and it was powerful. Now back to, I want to touch a little bit on every day. There was a time when I first started these, I started doing them in the mornings, not every single day, but most days. And then I started doing it once a week, and then I kind of stopped doing it. And I didn't even really notice. It wasn't something that I had prioritized as well as I wish I had at the time. And all of a sudden, I wasn't performing how I wanted to, whether it was at work, or whether it was with my marriage, or just getting stuff done around the house. I was like, what the heck is going on? I was making so much progress, and here I am sliding backwards. And then thankfully, Logan and I had a meeting where I was telling him this, and he said, well, have you been doing your breakthroughs? I said, well, apparently not, or clearly not, I think is what I said. And since then, I've been doing them every day, and I find myself not sliding back, actually making progress again. And it's amazing how impactful it is to do it every day. Not only because, yes, it's a high frequency of it, but by making it daily, you're also more committed to making the changes in the first place. Because as you can see on the screen, it says commit to living this new belief and find evidence to support it. So I'm at least taking care of the first half, where I'm committing to it every single day. I'm committing myself to the process and saying, yep, this is what I do. This is who I am. And it makes it a lot easier to find evidence when you do it that frequently as well. So that's really what I wanted to say.
That's awesome. That's fine. That's so good, right? And I think that commitment is on a daily basis, and it's the reason why I'm so convicted about doing things that if it's important to you, you'll do it every single day, right? And so it's the same thing. Like that commitment starts with your daily habit of doing it. And again, the more you do it, just the better you get at it, which also helps as well. So like if you do something 7 times versus you do it 4 times, which one are you going to get better at?
Exactly.
Right. And I believe that this is one of the most transformational processes that I've ever truly experienced. And like it's almost like cheating. It's like being able to like get prepared for life before life happens. And the thing that I realized through this process is that the more that I realize that I'm in control of my life, I'm in control of my state, I'm in control of my thoughts, my words, my actions, and like the freer I really am. And the less I have to worry about like what's John gonna say, or like what's so and so gonna say to me, or like what's the weather gonna be, like those things they don't matter. And they don't matter in the standpoint that I'm going to get triggered by them, because ultimately, like it's on me whether I get triggered or not. So I just need to understand if John says something that triggers me, I need to understand why I'm getting triggered, not that John needs to stop saying those words. And I think therein lies the difference. It's like it's snowing outside. Why am I so depressed about that? It's like it's not the snow's fault. It's my fault. It's like why am I upset about that? What's the belief I have that when it says it snows that I need to be upset about that? You know, and I think that's the sort of mindset that that the breakthrough process shows you. It shows you that true empowerment of that you literally have the ability to create happiness. Like attitude is a choice, or your happiness is a choice. Like the only thing that, again, I'll say it one more time, I think it's worth stating, is that the only thing that nobody can take from you is your choice. Right? You get to choose your attitude. You get to choose whether you're going to make something into a positive or negative, whether you're going to be happy or sad, whether you're going to smile or frown, whether you're going to stand up tall or whether you're going to sit over and slouch. Like that is your choice. Mm-hmm. So, anything else you want to add to that, John?
What's that?
Any final words that you want to add to that?
I do. I used to hate the phrase that happiness is a choice, because when I was unhappy, I'm like, okay, why in the world wouldn't I choose to be happy if I could just choose to be happy? So what I like to add when you say happiness is a choice, because I firmly believe that it doesn't mean that you know how to make that choice. And that's what this process teaches you how to do, because it is a skill to choose happiness. It's not something that you're born with. And if you are, good for you. That's amazing. Hold on to that. But practicing the skill of belief breakthroughs and getting better at that skill teaches you the skill of making the choice to be happy regardless of your circumstances.
That's fine.
So give yourself time. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself in the process, and be like, you know what? I might not choose to be happy today, but I'm making steps that are allowing me to be able to in the future.
And that's great you said that, because Most people look at happiness like a feeling rather than an action, right? Just the same way they look at love as a feeling rather than an action. And ultimately, when you start to understand that like love is an action, happiness is an action, all these things that we think about are feelings, like that we thought are feelings are actually actions, the more empowerment we actually have over our lives.
Those actions, peace. That's what I like.
Say that one more time.
Peace. Said, and those actions bring peace, and that's the word that I like.
Yes.
The actions of happiness and the acts of bring you peace, and ultimately, like if you're peaceful in your mind, what else do you need?
The tranquility of mind, man. That's the number one goal in life.
Yep.
Number one goal in life. And that's what you get through this breakthrough process. And so, John, thanks for rocking and rolling with me today on this breakthrough process. And hopefully, everyone who's watching this, like, you got like a lot from this, because this is truly like a transformative process, step by step, actionable, how to do it. Again, like this is literally the process on how to do it yourself. You can also have it guided. So like, for instance, like John does these breakthroughs every single day with himself, but me and him also do guided breakthroughs as well. I do the same thing. I do it on my own, but I also get guided breakthroughs as well. And so this is something that you start to realize that you can do this yourself, but when you do a guided breakthrough, man, you just get a lot deeper. You just go a lot deeper than you ever would on your own, which doesn't make either one good or bad. It's just they're just different. You just get to learn different experiences, but ultimately, like being self-sustainable and doing it yourself is super important, and being able to have those on a consistent basis is the benefit of doing it yourself. But if you're able to get guided breakthroughs, they were like, that's where I've personally had some of the biggest transformations is through the guided ones as well. So this process, step by step, go through the process, do it. It's a skill, and the more you do it, I assure you, the happier you'll be. There is not one person who goes through this process. I promise you. I guarantee it. If I'm a liar, you can come like shave my head. That if you go through this process and you're not happier and you're not feeling more control of your life after you do this for a consistent time, not for one time, but if you do it for 30 days straight and you're not happier after day 1 and day 30, you can come shave my head. Okay, like, that's how much I believe in this. And by the way, I'm super self-conscious about having my hair super short, so that's like, this is a big ask, right? But anyway, John, thank you so much. And my name is Logan Manzanares, and we are out. Bye.